Okay, so we are on part two of our intro to Iov. First thing I want to do is I want to show you a few hours after the last year, then the manuscript arrived. Okay, so I wanted to show it to you. So there's bad quote unquote news, and then there's good news. Okay, the bad news is that it is way bigger than I thought. Okay, let me unmute the not unmute. Let me unblur the camera. So, for those who don't remember or don't know, this is the manuscript from Zerachia Chain, who is this Maimonidean Rishon that I did not know about until I read this book by Professor Rabbi Robert Eisen, and he graciously offered to send me the photocopies of his manuscript of the manuscript that he worked with. There's two manuscripts. There's one in Oxford. I learned more about the manuscript also. There's one in Oxford. Uh, and there's one in Munich. And I knew that the Munich one was better, but I didn't know why. So apparently, the Munich one was published or not published. It was written, but like 15 years after the Oxford one, I think, and it is more explicit. Like it seems like when he was giving shiur on it, or when he distributed it, then there were points that he thought he needed to clarify, and so it's even more explicit than the other one. Okay, so here is the manuscript. It is 400 pages. Okay, like 400-ish pages. Like there's each one has 2 pages. I mean, actually, I took photos so I can display it on the screen to show you because so you can see it up close. Hold on. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So each of these giant photocopy pages is really 2 pages. Okay, and if you'll see here, I actually took a closer picture. Okay, so you have here, so you see the pasuk ish haya be'eretz utz Iov shmo v'haya ha'ishahu tam v'yashar yarei elokim v'sar me'ra. Okay, now this is considered a legible manuscript. Okay, and it is fairly legible. So I was starting to read here. Tistakel amaro ish haya velo amar masai haya velo. Now this probably don't quite get kain im haya ki kol zehu remez al shehasefer hu mashal umilas utz gam kain leinyan kamo sheyira ze kvar. So I can read pretty much a lot of it, but a lot of it, not all the pages are good quality because these are photographs, I guess. But here's the other good news. So the bad good news is that it's much longer than I thought, so I'm not going to be able to easily like type it up and digitize it like I thought. And I'm not even going to delude myself into thinking that like I can do this over the summer because it's just way too much of an endeavor. But the other good news is that this is Professor Eisen's copy, and he went through the whole thing, and he has his notes on the margins. So, for example, he wrote in what one word is here that is hard to read. Here he wrote a word with a question mark because he didn't know. Here he put in brackets not in Oxford, so I have his notes to like help guide me through this. And so that is just really, really nice. So what my plan is I'm going to use the corrupt published version and learn from that. And then when there's something that I am going to use in shiur, I'll consult the original manuscript. And who knows, maybe in 2 months, then AI will be good enough to digitize the whole thing. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so that was that. Okay, before we start, I just wanted to let you know I'm gonna stop at 12:10 because I have a phone call that's very important at 12:15. There is a minor chance that they'll call as early as 12, and if so, I'm gonna have to abruptly stop here. Okay, and I'm not gonna put you on hold because I don't know how long the phone call is gonna take, but very, very important phone call that I can't miss. In fact, I'm gonna put my phone on with sound, so in case I don't miss a call. Okay, so let's do a quick review of last time and add a few points. And then I think what's probably going to happen today is we are going to start taking up a new question, but the facts are so long that we might just do setup today and then do like ideas and answers next time. Okay. So of the 10 questions that we wrote last time, the question we focused on was who is the author? Okay, this time I'd like to start focusing on when was it written, when does the narrative take place historically, if at all, and we also kind of touched on how does this relate to the rest of Tanakh. Okay, so that is what we're going to do. So we said, who wrote Iyov? So Chazal's answer, their only explicit answer is in Bava Basra Yud Dalet Amud Beis, which is Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it. Okay, we asked, how do we know? We gave two answers. One is either it's a Masorah, either this is something that was just passed down that we know that Moshe wrote it, or it's inference. Okay, how do we infer it? So we know that the best qualified person was Moshe Rabbeinu because he knew Hashem face to face. We also know that he asked Hashem, Hodi'eni na es derachacha ve'edacha, make known to me your ways and I will know you. And Hashem answered him in the affirmative and said, of your kol tuvi al panacha, I'll show you all my goodness. And he gave him a whole lesson in hashgacha. So we know that Moshe received an explicit nevuah at the Chet HaEgel on this topic. And we also know, based on the Gemara in Brachos, which, when I say we know, I mean that Chazal assume that Moshe was asking about this specific question about Tzadik V'Ralo and Rasha V'Tovlo. Okay, so that's inference. All right. Okay, then we asked, why didn't the author mention his name? And given the author's decision not to write his name, why or how did Chazal see fit to disclose it? So we gave two answers. Esti gave the answer that perhaps Moshe wanted the book to speak for itself. He didn't want it to be accepted on authority because it might detract from people's ability to gain from it. And then Zerach Yachain gave his answer, which we read inside, which is that Moshe did not want to imply that the contents of Iyov are nevuah, since the theories of Hashgacha and Iyov came from either Moshe's own mind, completely unaided, or it was through Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, Zerach Yachain gave both those possibilities. So then we asked, really? Was there room for Moshe's own theories? So we gave three answers to that question. One is perhaps there is a limit to what can be conveyed to Moshe even through prophecy. And when Hashem said, I'm going to tell you everything about Hashgacha, he meant I'm going to tell you everything that it is possible to be conveyed through Hashgacha. Okay. And that made me realize that there is an analogy here. Okay. So what people nowadays call Kabbalah, which is not a term Chazal used.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that distinction?
The distinction of not nevuah but his own theories, or the distinction of
no, sorry, that's just the very last thing that you said.
Yeah, so in other words, that I think you made this point also last time, that Hashem said, I'll give you all the knowledge of my ways, but what mechanism was Hashem using? He was using nevuah, or Moshe's nevuah, and there's a limit to how much you can convey through nevuah, or what kinds of information you can convey. And the way I could say this in a cutesy way is nevuah is not magic. I know people think of it as magic. I think the paradigm people think of nevuah as post 1999 is, or 97 is the Matrix of Neo wants to know Kung Fu, and then they upload Kung Fu and he says, I know Kung Fu, you know? So like, if nevuah was magic, you could just beam the information into his mind. But I'm saying, no, nevuah is a certain type of way to convey knowledge, just like knowledge through the senses is a way of conveying knowledge, just like knowledge through reasoning is a way of knowledge. And every way of conveying knowledge has its inherent limits. So perhaps Hashem conveyed to him all that is possible to convey, but there's a limit to that. Is that clear?
Yes. So I'm sorry. Let me just regroup what my question was. Hold on one sec.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Just to restate it, so that whatever this knowledge is that is in Iyov, and we're not specifying exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Is perhaps something that's outside the scope of what nevuah.
Correct, and that's why Moshe had to write his own book, and that's why he and that's the difference between the contents of the Torah that come from Hashem through Nevuos Moshe, and then the contents of Iov. Yeah. An analogy, okay, is, so Chazal don't use the term Kabbalah. What they use is the terms Maaseh Bereshis and Maaseh Merkava, okay, which mean the work of creation and the work of the chariot. Sorry, not Bracha, Maaseh Merkava, and the work of the chariot, okay? So these are like the most esoteric contents of knowledge that were given as part of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Okay, so and there are halachos about how you can convey them. So, for example, with Maaseh Bereshis, for both of them, there has to be a qualification on the part of the students that the Gemara details about, like what, how qualified you have to be. But whereas Maaseh Bereshis can be taught to one student at a time, in full, okay, Ma'aseh Merkava, which is metaphysics, which is the highest levels of metaphysics, can only be taught by way of allusion, okay, not in like complete sentences and words, okay. Why? You would think that like if you're going to pass, and by the way, and this is why the Rambam holds that this Kabbalah was lost, because the students who were qualified to learn it were too few, and like you can't write it down. Like, so why can't you write it down? So the Rambam explains, actually, I'm going to quote the Rambam. Hold on. So this is in his commentary on Iov. Oh, sorry, not on Iov. I wish the Rambam wrote a commentary on Iov. This is his commentary on Chagiga, on the Mishnayos about Ma'aseh Bereshis, Ma'aseh Merkava. So he says, why can't you teach it explicitly? So I think people think you can't teach it explicitly because like it has to be kept secret, you know, like there's rules, you know. He says no. He says you can't teach it explicitly because he says, hold on. This is important. I just got to find it. Oh, here we go. So he says like this. So the way the Mishnah says it is in order to learn Ma'aseh Merkava, you need to be a chacham umevin midato. You need to be wise and able to understand from your own mind. V'hu, namely, shemis orer umevin ha'inyanim me'atmo, that he needs to be like awakened and to understand these topics by himself. Ve'enot sarach leva'er lo, and it is not necessary to explain it to him. Ella romzim lo beremes. So the teacher of this Ma'aseh Merkava has to allude to him through hints. V'hu lomed v'dan al piv me'atmo, and the recipient will make inferences by himself. V'zeh inyan amram shonin lo rashe prakim. That's what it means. You have to teach him the heads of the chapters. Okay, now why is this? Why does it have to be this way? Because again, you would think that it's an inefficient way of teaching because maybe the person's going to make a mistake. So he says, Lefi sheyesh sham inyanim hanechkakim ben nefashos hashlemim mi bnei adam. He says, because there are concepts that literally are engraved in the souls of perfected human beings. Ukeshemasbirim osam bilashon, but when you explain them in language, umamashlim osam b'mashalim, and you make you give analogies for them, pag ta'aman, then their reasoning, well, literally means their taste becomes diminished. But you know, tam is an equivocal term in Hebrew. Tam means taste or reasoning. I'm not sure the way the Rambam is using it here. V'yot im inyanin, and then they depart from their meaning. Okay, so in other words, there are the analogy I like to use is there's these concepts that we call first principles, things that we have like embedded in our minds that you cannot explain with language. So for example, my favorite examples are in math. So the concept of a part and a whole. We all know what that means, but if I ask you to explain what a part means without making reference to the concept of a whole, or if I ask you to explain what a whole is without making reference to the concept of a part, you cannot do it. It's a basic idea in your mind. You cannot explain it. Or let's say I tell you to define what is reality. You'll say that which exists. And if I say, well, what is existence? You'll say that which is real. You can't define it in any more terms. Or if I ask you to explain what the difference is between the number 1 and the number 2, or explain what number is, you can't explain it, right? It's just like concepts that we have in our minds. A lot of theories about how we get them. All you can do is like, if I'm talking to you about numbers, I can bring numbers up in your mind, but I can't actually teach you the concept, okay? So now imagine there's this category of concepts that the most I could do if I wanted to teach it to you is you need to get to the level of knowledge where these concepts naturally form in your mind. And then the most I, as the teacher, can do is just awaken those concepts in your mind, but you have to like arrive at them on your own. And if I tried to explain it in language, I couldn't do it. And if I tried to give analogies, then you would get a misunderstanding. Okay, so that's why, according to the Rambam, the true Kabbalah cannot be taught verbally. It has to be like conveyed non-verbally. And that's why, according to the Rambam, there cannot be any such thing as Kabbalah books that spell out Kabbalah, because it's impossible to convey this knowledge to people. It has to be arrived at on your own. Okay, so why am I bringing that up? So analogously, you see that when it comes to teaching concepts, the medium of language has its limits, and the medium of mashal has its limits. The medium of prophecy has its limits. The medium of Moshe's prophecy has its limits. So perhaps Iov is like the territory, I guess, that cannot be covered by the nevuah of Moshe. God gave him everything that could be known through nevuah of Moshe, but then the rest of this is Moshe figuring out on his own and conveying it, in words. Okay, so that was a long analogy, but I thought it was a good one. Yeah, Esty.
First of all, I love all of this. I have a lot of things to say about learning ideas like that, which I'm not going to put into this year right now.
Yeah.
Just about communicating ideas and how they work in the mind. But
Yeah.
it's really interesting to me in terms of assuming that the topic here is, justice, how, as we said in the very, very short version, why, when bad things happen to good people. It's just an interesting idea because we all have this idea of justice and it's already in place. And,
Yeah.
experiences that we have don't suit. I think justice is one of those elemental,
Right.
whatever, I forgot, things that you can't explain. It's
Right.
just an idea that we have.
Right.
And it's just an interesting thing that this would be, in one of those categories.
That's a good possibility as well. Yeah. I'm actually realizing, by the way, I think there's actually two possibilities here. Hold on. One is there's a limit that could be to what can be conveyed to Moshe, even through prophecy. Hold on. Let me put this here. Alternatively, there is, maybe Moshe got a full answer to this. This is actually corresponding much better to what I said. We got a full answer to this, but there's a limit to what he can convey of his prophecy. And this book is the most communicable knowledge that he can teach. So in other words, the first answer is saying that Moshe was limited in what God could teach him. And this book is his speculations based on the best of his knowledge. The other possibility is saying, no, God fully taught him the answer to this question, but there's a limit to what Moshe can convey to us, just like there's a limit to what someone who knows Mas and Merkava can convey to their students. I think those are two distinct possibilities, but they're both epistemological about like the limits to what we can know. Okay, good. And as he's saying that perhaps justice, I'm going to actually take this note. Perhaps justice is in this realm of first principles. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Answer number 3 is Chachmas Hashem is infinite, and perhaps one can always delve deeper, and I'll leave it to the to the people like Tamar who know way more about math than I do, that conceivably, math is not an empirical subject. You're not getting new facts about math from the physical world. So all there is in math, we have in our own minds. But you see that with every generation that goes by, there's more and more math research being done and delving more and more into these concepts that we all have without getting any new data. So perhaps even though Moshe got all the data, it's funny, one of the possibilities that the Ralbag says on the nevuah of Moshe at the Chet HaEgel. By the way, I'm not going to apologize for talking so much about the nevuah of Moshe at the Chet HaEgel, because why is that a timely topic? Slichos and Yom Kippur, right? This is where the Yugam Umidos Arachmim come from, so it's been on my mind a lot. So Tuvi. So the Ralbag says that. So the pasuk again says, "Vayomer ani a'avir kol tuvi al panacha v'krasi b'shem Hashem levnacha v'chanosi es asher achon v'richamti es asher arachem." Hashem said, "I will cause all of my goodness to pass before you, and I will call out in the name of Hashem before you, and I will favor the one to whom I will favor, and I will have mercy to the one to whom I have mercy." So Ralbag gives two possibilities about what Moshe got. Okay, Amrei Lav Hashem. Hashem said to Moshe, "Ani avir kol tuvi al panacha v'hein hanimtsaos hamuchashos hashofaos mimeni." I'm going to show you all of the existences, the sensory existences that emanate from me, which exhibit the goodness and perfection to the greatest extent. Alternatively, which is a better explanation, I will cause to pass before you all the goodness of the ways of my hashgacha on existences before you through a prophetic vision, by teaching you the ways that I supervise them, the ways of my hashgacha. Okay, which is the midos of Ekra b'shem Hashem lefnecha b'mari hanavua, and I will call out in the name of Hashem before you in a prophetic vision, by showing you the system that was arranged by me, and through this you will arrive at an understanding of my hashgacha on existences. Okay, so Ralbag's two possibilities are like this. What did Hashem show Moshe? Either second possibility, he taught him all the ideas about hashgacha on existences, but the first possibility is he showed him just the sensory data, and then Moshe arrived at the information on his own. Okay, like it'd be like if you told a scientist, let's say you took the greatest scientist who's capable of thinking clearly about everything, but lacks the data, and you said, "Hey, I'm going to show you, what would happen if we use the Hadron Collider to, show you experiments in elementary particles? What if I showed you snapshots of the Big Bang? What if I gave you all of the data about everything, and then you figured it out on your own?" Okay, so those are the two possibilities here. Okay, so it's possible that what Moshe got, according to the Ralbag, is Moshe got all the data. Oh, this is another possibility. Hold on. This goes in the Moshe thing here. I see your hand, Esty. I'm just going to type this while it's still on the tip of my mind. So another possibility is, this is from Ralbag. Ralbag's first possibility on Shemos Lama Gimel Yud Tes. Hashem showed Moshe all the sensory data of the universe, but Moshe had to arrive at everything based on his own theories. Okay, and some of these theories are what he is sharing with us in Sefer Iyov. Yasti?
Okay, so maybe this is going down a rabbit hole and you don't want to address it.
Yeah.
But to the extent that any knowledge that we have also comes to us from Hashem, like a lower level of nevuah type of thing, that we get the information, we get the sensory data, and then we make our own conclusions, like ideas come to us. If we hold that that's how knowledge or learning works.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe that's just like one of the answers. Then, because I was like, what's the difference? Like, no, it's Hashem telling you the actual information would be what? Like, you can't understand it on your own. You need the conclusions made for you, versus the idea. Okay, like kind of like, what's the difference? I mean, like,
okay, so
that
is the question that we ended off with, which I will review I think that's the question we ended off with, which I'll review in a second. I just want to come up with labels for these answers. So the first one is epistemological. That's not how you spell it. Epistemological limits of Mosaic prophecy. Okay, that's answer number one. Answer number two is epistemological limits of communication. Okay. Answer number three is different take on what Moshe received. Okay. Answer number four is the nature of infinite knowledge. And then answer number five is, I wrote, even in the Psukim, it seems that Moshe continued expanding his knowledge after the Nevuah at the Chet HaEgel. So evidently there was room for his own theories. Okay, so this is like just, evidence in the Chumash that, so for example, when so Moshe got all of the whatever this vision of Nebuah was at the Chet HaEgel. Okay, that was like close after Sinai. Okay, but let's say later on in Bahaloscha, when the people complained about meat, and Moshe said to Hashem, "How am I going to get meat to feed all these people?" Evidently, he couldn't answer that question on his own, just based on his knowledge of Hashgacha. Or when Moshe asked to be let into Eretz Yisrael, evidently there was more to learn. He couldn't just infer from this his answer to that question, So like maybe he did get a certain big chunk of knowledge in the vision at the Chet HaEgel, but there was a lot more to learn. So there's a lot more to learn here also. Okay, so that's just narratively we see that there's more to learn. Yeah, Figgy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to understand that more, but then you explained it, so
okay.
All good.
Okay, good. Okay, so now I think what Esty was asking is the question we ended off with, which is what do we learn? Oh, no, sorry, hold on. This was a question. Oh, sorry, I didn't type this question. This is a question here, remaining question, which is what, if anything, what difference, if any at all, does this make in how we approach the Sefer? Okay. Yeah, ask your question again, Esty. My mind registered it as being here, but maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, I was trying to actually just understand the difference between if and then this is an if this is
Yeah.
if all knowledge comes to us through some level of, I don't know, I'm not going to, like a lower grade, not like Nevuah, but in other words, you have physical experience, you get the data, and then ideas come to you.
Right.
Right. What's the distinction between, let's say, Hashem showing Moshe the data and then the idea came to him?
Right.
I guess you would call that his own idea versus what's the other option that Hashem gave him the formed idea already,
Right.
like a Nevuah, like not through the sensory information, and it was just Nevuah?
Let me just quote the Rambam. Hold on. Oh, actually, no, sorry. I don't know where this Rambam is. I'm not gonna be able to find it easily, but I think somewhere in the more Nevuchim, in the second Chelek, towards in the chapters about Moshe's Nevuah, I think he says, like, we don't really know what the nature of Moshe's Nevuah was. So there's really not any way for us to know this. With actual Nevuah, not actual, with like regular Nevuah, then the Mefarshim do try to explain the mechanisms of how it works, and maybe we can answer according to that. But we will never really know what the nature of Moshe's Nevuah was, because he was the only one who got it, and we can't see inside his mind. So I it's a good question. I don't know.
So like so if it were somebody else, maybe that would be a question that we could explore, but or maybe not, but it's irrelevant here because Moshe's Nevuah is different.
Yeah, I think so. Rivka says in the chat, why are we calling it a vision of the Chet HaEgel? No, I'm saying the vision at the Chet HaEgel. Meaning after Moshe sees the Chet HaEgel, he goes up to Hashem and he asks Hashem to forgive Bnei Israel or to not destroy them. And he has this whole dialogue with Hashem. And in the dialogue, he asks Hashem, make known to me your ways. And then Hashem shows him a vision, which is where we get the 13 meters of Rachamim from. So that's the vision, the prophetic vision I'm talking about. But the Chet HaEgel he saw. Yeah. Okay, thanks for asking for clarification. Yeah, Ayala?
I don't know if this is outside the scope and just taking us too far off field, but
yeah,
from my understanding, isn't that how we like gain all knowledge? Is not through having like the ideas given to us, but like somehow there's like facts laid or like, yeah, I guess facts laid out and then like
okay.
our mind.
So here's the so the answer is yes, but okay. So so the way we gain knowledge is through the medium of the senses, which I'm going to explain this in Aristotelian terms because that's the terms that the Rishonim say it, is that we have sense perceptions. Those sense perceptions are recorded in our imagination, which is the part of the mind that can store, retrieve, and manipulate sense impressions. Okay, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, whatever. And then the mind abstracts or extracts a conceptual understanding from the sensory data. Okay, that's the normal way of gaining knowledge. Okay, and that's the way that normal Nevi'im gain knowledge, because the only difference is that we get our facts from our senses. The Nevi'im their senses shut off, and the sensory knowledge comes to them directly into the imagination by means of a malach, okay, of the 10th level of malachim, of angels, okay. But Moshe did not get his knowledge through a malach, okay, which means he did not get it through the psyche or the imagination or the senses. How did he get it? I don't know. That's the thing, okay. And there's a theory. This is much later we are going to talk about angels, but I just want to share with you a cool thing that I heard from Rabbi Yaakov Trachtman. I didn't even hear it from him. I heard it from chabrusa of his. Okay, so the Rambam says that there are 10 levels of angels. They are Chayos HaKodesh, which literally means holy creatures. Vehim L'malim Nikol, they're above everything. Then beneath them, Ofanim, which literally means wheels. Beneath them are Elim, I don't know what that means. Underneath them are Chashmalim, which does not mean electric angels. It's that the modern Hebrew word for electricity was borrowed from this Tanakh term. Okay, then beneath them are the Seraphim, fiery angels. Beneath them are Malachim, which is both a generic term for the class, but also a specific species of angel. Elohim, which does not mean God, okay, it means powers. B'nai Elohim, okay, that's beneath that. Kruvim, and then Ishim, okay, and why is the last one called Ishim? He says, Umala Asiris he mala satsuro shenikros Ishim. The 10th level is the one called Ishim. Vehema malachim shemadabrim im hanavim v'nir lahem b'mar nevuah. These are the angels that speak with the prophets and appear to them in prophetic visions. Lefikach nikru Ishim. That's why they're called people or men, because their level is proximate to the, like, slightly above the level of human intelligence. Now, Moshe did not get his nevuah through a malach, okay? So the question is, did he get his nevuah directly from Hashem or through an angel that was not this angel? Okay, so what's the cool answer? Anyone have any theory? Did he get it directly from Hashem or just through not the 10th level of angel, but a different level? So Rabbi Trachtman's theory is Moshe got his nevuah through the 9th level, which is through Kruvim. And what's the proof that Moshe got his nevuah through Kruvim? Or not the proof, but the evidence? Yeah, Vega?
Could it have something to do with the Kruvim, like in the Mishkan?
Yes, because the Kruvim are on the Aron HaKodesh, which houses the nevuah of Moshe, which houses the Luchos and the Torah, you know? So long answer to your question, Ayala, is the only thing we can know about how the other Nevi'im got nevuah is by speculating about what these Ishim are, you know, and through knowing our own knowledge process. But we know that operates through the imagination. Moshe's nevuah did not operate through the imagination. It operated through the Kruvim, which I don't know how much we can know about that. Yeah. Okay. So the question we ended off on is, what difference does this make in how we approach the Sefer, which is related to this question number 3. What do we learn from the fact that Moshe wrote Iyov, or who cares? But that's as far as we got. Okay. Before we go on, so this takes 34 minutes of review. Okay, but it was a good review. Okay. Before we go on, there was one thing I actually meant to mention at the very beginning, which is just a clarification, which we talked about kind of in the chat afterwards. When I called simplistic answers to the question in Sefer Iyov stupid, I did not mean to call the people who believe them stupid. I was calling the people who teach them stupid. Okay. And the reason why I call the people who teach them stupid is because they should know better. That what I said last time is, if you're going to give a one-sentence answer to the question of why good things happen to bad people and vice versa, then you're essentially saying we could throw away the whole Sefer Iyov. And what you're essentially saying is that Moshe should have been able to figure this out on his own, instead of getting to the pinnacle of human intelligence and then asking Hashem, please tell me this. Okay, so anyone who gives such an answer as a teacher of Torah is giving a stupid answer and should know better that the answer is deeper than that. Okay, but if you were taught this by rabbis and books that you trusted, you know, that's, you know, it's their fault. Like, you know, it's the students are not at fault for being taught the wrong answers by their teachers. Yeah, Esty?
What would you say if somebody comes to certain conclusions on their own that I guess you would qualify as stupid, but like while they're thinking that, and their thinking process just seems like, oh, maybe it's this.
Right. So I would say that, you have to know yourself, and you have to know what the complexity of the topic is. And I'd say it's a gradient scale, and a lot doesn't have to do with stupidity. It has to do with arrogance. In other words, if a person is a scientist, let's say, right, and they take up, let's say you're an undergraduate in science, and you take up one of the major questions that the leading physicists haven't figured out, and you think you got the answer in a couple months. I'd say that that's more arrogant than stupid, and I'd say that, should an undergraduate student know better? I don't know what level undergraduate students are at, but like at the very least they should have pause. Same thing in Torah. Like, I'll give you another example of this. Like I've said this anecdote before, but there were in my second year of yeshiva, there were first year yeshiva guys who opened Sefer Iyov, and they had a chavrusa. I don't know how long it lasted. They had a chavrusa where they were trying to figure out, how God created the world just through reading the words in the Sefer in Parshas Iyov with no mafarshim. To me, that's stupid. It's not just arrogant; it's stupid. Like, you really think that you can figure out all the secrets of Iyov by just reading the words? So like, I don't know. Like, but on the other hand, let's say you've worked at this for 40 years, and you start to arrive at certain conclusions, like, maybe that is warranted. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I see.
I'm just curious, and if you don't want to address this, it's fine. Do you have like a line that you draw between, let's say, stupid and ignorant?
I don't know.
Because I feel like some of that is ignorant. It's like, or some
Right.
combination of stupidity,
Right.
arrogance, and ignorance, which I'm guilty of myself, not
Yeah,
infrequently.
it's a good question.
I feel like there's some questions where I feel like I mean, I once listened to actually specific on Iov. I listened to Rabbi Chait's. I'm like, oh, I thought some of those things that were like clearly wrong, and I had thought that and I think it was like some combination of just like not realizing the complexity of the problem,
Right.
actually, and
Right.
that was partly arrogance, partly just laziness. I don't know what, like some combination of things,
It's a
but I
good
feel like
question.
ignorance plays a big part of things. Of
Yeah.
not realizing that you have a bad answer can sometimes be from ignorance, not stupidity.
Right. Correct. Yeah. I mean,
both.
I'll tell you a something that I want to write what I'm thinking about this morning post about later on. So, actually, this is good. I was going to ask Tamar about this. Tamar, okay, so there's a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, okay? And Tamar once sent me an article that said that the Dunning-Kruger effect is not exactly the way people think of it. Can you remind me, Tamar, of what the Dunning-Kruger effect is? If you remember.
Yes. Okay. I have not reviewed this in a while, so I
Okay.
might be saying this wrong, which would be kind of ironic. But let's say that I'm saying it right.
Sure. Yeah, it's gonna be better than what I have. Whatever it is.
The thing that people think the Dunning-Kruger effect is that the less you know about something, the more you think you know about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Which would mean that, like, let's say, for example, somebody who, like, I don't know, never took a math class thinks they know more calculus than somebody who's a mathematician. Something like that.
Right.
I would say the example that sounds wrong, but maybe you have other things like where you might imagine this effect is true.
Okay, right. Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to know what I think
Yeah, I want to know. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, is that the less you know about something, the more you overestimate your knowledge.
Okay.
So the overestimation is a departure from your actual level of knowledge, but it's not that you think you know more in absolute sense.
Okay, so it's
not that your self-assessment is absolutely higher than
relative to what you know.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, fine. That's good. Okay, so I did not fact check this. Okay, but I read this thing, and this is why I haven't written about it yet. I'm going to read it anyway. So this might, don't take this with a grain of salt. So this is about the origin of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Okay. In the spring of 1995, MacArthur Wheeler walked into two banks in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to carry out robberies. What made the case unusual wasn't the crime itself, but his belief in a bizarre getaway tactic. Wheeler had smeared lemon juice on his face, convinced it would render him invisible to security cameras. His reasoning came from the fact that lemon juice can be used as invisible ink, only becoming visible when exposed to heat. He mistakenly assumed the same principle applied to surveillance footage. When police reviewed the tapes, Wheeler was easily identifiable because he even looked directly at the cameras and smiled, confident in his invisibility. Within hours, the police arrested him. Shocked at being caught, Wheeler reportedly exclaimed, "But I wore the juice." Okay. The case caught the attention of psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger. They were fascinated not just by Wheeler's flawed logic, but by his absolute confidence in it. This became the foundation for their groundbreaking research into cognitive bias. In 1999, they published their study on what is now called the Dunning-Kruger effect, a psychological phenomenon where people with limited knowledge or skill greatly overestimate their competence. Okay. The Wheeler's lemon juice blunder has since become a textbook example of this effect. It demonstrates how ignorance isn't simply the absence of knowledge, it can foster misplaced certainty. His case, though humorous in hindsight, underscores a universal human flaw. The less we know, the more likely we are to overestimate our abilities. Okay. So again, I haven't checked this out, but Esty, my question for you is, would you call that guy ignorant or stupid?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, right? So like, I don't know the line, and I think, again, like I said, I think it's relevant.
Yeah, I would say one more thing though. I mean, if a person's in the process of learning and is making mistakes along the way, in other words, if he were in the process of learning of how to become invisible, and along the way he thought that putting lemon juice on his face would work, and then he was thinking about it and maybe talking about it and saying it to people, and someone said to him that, I wouldn't say to him, that's stupid.
Right.
I would say well, I mean, it is, but it's also, you're ignorant. You don't know enough. It's both in a certain amount, in a certain way. If that's what I'm saying, like if a person is in the process of learning and comes to bad conclusions, meaning something that's obviously false and even misleading or dangerous or things like that, I still don't know that I would call it stupid, unless that's where the person's stopping.
Okay, so then maybe we need another term here, because I think the distinction that you're making here is, like, I think there's a difference between when you're in the process of learning, you're going to come to conclusions that might not necessarily be reliable about. Okay, but if you're going to either teach it to other people or make a high stakes decision based on it, okay, so then I think that crosses a line qualitatively.
Right. I guess as a Talmidah, I'm just like personally like sensitive, because I know that I make a lot of mistakes in the process, and I might even think something for a little while, but I feel like as long as I forgive myself, as long as I'm on a path, as opposed to either making a high stakes decision on it or teaching other people with certainty, which, I mean, I don't have certainty, but I wouldn't call my ideas, I mean, maybe I am, but I haven't been calling my own ideas stupid, because even if they're deeply flawed, because I'm in the middle.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear that. And Rabbi Moskowitz always used to quote Rav Hai Gaon, which again, this is Rabbi Moskowitz quoting, and he has a horrible memory for sources, so take this with a grain of salt, that Rav Hai Gaon would do teshuvah every day for avodah zarah shebalev, for avodah zarah of the heart, because every day he gained more knowledge about God, and then realized that the God he was worshiping beforehand was really avodah zarah, because it was not the correct idea about God, So like, that is a natural part of learning.
Right. So like maybe the ideas themselves, if it's a final resting place and you're not going to pursue anymore, you would call it a stupid idea.
But again, I just dialing back for 1 second here. Again, I do think that the decision, having a elementary or incomplete or distorted idea in the process of learning, it is what it is. But the decision to act on it or teach it as if you are certain when you're not, or when there are high stakes, I think I'm calling that not ignorance. I'm calling that like, that is a stupid decision,
Yeah, and potentially extremely harmful also.
Right, and harmful as well. Another example I just read this morning is I read the first person to ever die from jumping off the Brooklyn Bridge, okay, was a guy who wanted to demonstrate, I guess there was a theory that when people, I guess there was a theory at the time that falling through the air kills you. And so the way that this little blurb said it is that he demonstrated his theory right. He didn't die from falling. He died from hitting the water, and like, that was also a thing where like, is that, I don't know how much they knew about surface tension.
But he was trying to show that you don't die from going through the air.
Yeah, that's what the way that this article presented it. Yeah. But but that's Again, that's just another example of like high stakes, high stakes move that like seems to have needed more research before it was put into practice, or maybe just another way of doing it, Yeah, Fega?
Just quickly, but I find it so funny, like to say that it's coming from a place of like stupidity slash ignorance slash arrogance, because just this week, I read like a Torah from like a leading Torah figure who said that the ultimate purpose of sickness, the only reason people get sick is for humility. It's because they need to be humbled. So
Right.
it's just
Right.
the irony.
Yep. Yeah, Vanessa?
Yeah, I was just gonna talk on like the humility piece. I feel like everyone gets mistaken in different ways, and like that's fine in itself. I don't think that's what we're discussing. I think it's more the like willingness to act on you being wrong and not being able to have the humility of saying like, hey, like maybe there's doubt here, maybe there's something that I'm missing here. Like maybe, you know what I mean? Like I've definitely been misled 1,000 times in learning, but like I think it's been rare the times where I've been like, no, like I'm sure I'm right about this, and like this is how it is, without like having a source backing me up.
Right, correct. And by the way, speaking of that humility point, I do think that if someone is teaching a topic of this weight, and they say, like, by the way, like, I'm not sure, about this result, that itself, I think, puts the whole thing into context, like I always, when I present, the answer in Sefer Iyov, when we get to the end, I always try to repeat many, many times to my students in high school. I say, remember, okay, this is one of the deepest books in Tanakh, okay, and I am presenting to you my understanding of the Rambam's understanding of this book. But there are many, many other understandings, and like Rambam might have gotten it wrong, and I might have gotten it wrong in the Rambam. Like it's one possibility of many. Whereas I do think that the people who, I mean, you tell me. I mean, you don't have to like tell me like by verbalizing it, but like you tell me when you hear people in Judaism who set themselves up as teachers answering this question about why bad things happen to good people and vice versa, do they say, this is a possible theory I might have, but I'm not sure because this is really deep? Or do they say, this is why it happened? Esty?
Yeah, I think the distinction I was pushing, as you were talking, I think the difference is that I think as a student, and this is just me personally, and maybe I'm speaking for other people as well, and if so, then I hope so that I'm good. That's why I'm articulating this. Is that sometimes when you hear that an idea that you were thinking was stupid, and maybe it was a stupid idea, it's hard not to feel like I myself was stupid.
Right. And sometimes, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just like it could be hard and like a little cringy because you just feel like, oh my gosh, I was being stupid, which is okay because I that's part of learning also.
Yeah, no,
but,
right. I think
I
think there's two possibilities, right? Sometimes we arrive at a false idea because we were ignorant and didn't know any better, and this is just the process of knowledge. And sometimes it was because we were making a stupid assumption, and we feel the embarrassment of that. And remember, this is the motto of the Mishnah Torah. Now, granted, the Mishnah Torah is about halacha, but he's quoting a pasuk which is about all of Torah. The motto is, let me find it to show it to you. Gotta scroll past all. Oh, yeah, where'd it go? There it is. Oz lo evosh b'habiti el kol mitzvosecha. Then I will not be ashamed when I gaze upon all your mitzvos. That if you know all of the mitzvos, so then you won't be ashamed of like realizing that you made some mistake or you were ignorant about some point. But that's if you master the entire thing, okay? And kal v'chomer with the entire Torah, that you are going to be embarrassed by like making these false or stupid assumptions as you go through. And that's in a lo baishan lo made, someone who's ashamed can't learn. And I do think it's harsh when you're first starting off and learning, where you have this feeling of embarrassment, but then you get used to the fact, like, yeah, I'm as Ryan Moskowitz would say, how low can you go? Like it's you're realizing more and more and more how inferior we are, and how like we're just what's the Newton thing I like? Newton seashell quote that I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore and diverting myself, and now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary. Like that's the experience that we have of in the vastness of all knowledge. Okay, slight change of plans. Okay, this is a good review. I'm glad we went over this. Okay, instead of going on to the new topic, I want to just wrap up the topic of authorship okay, and then we'll stop before we go into the topic of the historical period. Okay, so I came across so we have here Chazal saying that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote Iyov, and we have Zerach Yachin saying that it was his own from his own mind. Okay, hold on just 1 second here. I actually want to make a question 0. Okay, just because I'm not going to change the number now. Okay, question 0 is hold on just 1 second here. No, okay, I just don't know where to put this on my thing. Okay, I'm just going to make a new thing just to avoid thinking about it right now. Okay, so going back. Okay, hold on. Who wrote Iov? Okay, so you have answer 1 is the Brisa in Bava Basra Yudal Amud Beis, which says Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay. Then within that answer, you have Zerach Yachin, which is that Moshe wrote it with his own mind. Okay. But then I found this Ramban. Okay. And the Ramban says something, I don't know if it's radical or very not radical. All right. He says, we're going to return, this is in the middle of his intro, we're going to return to the complaint of Iov and his arguments with his friends, or his rebuke. No, his arguments. You should know that since this is a great foundation of Torah, and from the outset, appears in great confusion. Then an entire book has been devoted to it, which is Sefer Iyov. There are those of our rabbis who said that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it. And that it was told him from the mouth of the Almighty, the situation with that man and his friends, Sefer Breshis, just as was said to him, Sefer Breshis. And he was commanded to write it because its content was a foundation of our emunah and the foundation of Torah. Okay, so he says there are rabbis who hold that Moshe wrote it and that it is exactly the same authority as Sefer Breshis, and he was commanded by God to write it. So Zerach Yachin and Ramban are like two ends of the spectrum, okay? There are two ways Moshe could have written, right? There's his own mind. Then there's Zerach Yachin's middle position, which is his mind aided by Ruach HaKodesh. Then there's full-on nevuah like Sefer Breshis. Okay, so that's a real gamut of opinions there, okay? But you notice that he says there are certain of our rabbis. So he's taking the Brisa as one opinion among many. Okay, so Sforno actually goes on and says this as well. Okay, now just a spoiler alert for what we were going to do this time, but we're going to do next time now. Bli Neder is there is a big machlokas about when Iov lived, if he lived at all. Okay, half of the opinions hold that he lived contemporaneously with Moshe or before the time of Moshe. Okay, but he says, Sforno says, "V'gam ki rabu hadeos al odos shem hamachaber es hasefer hanizkar uzmano." There are many opinions regarding the name of the author of this book and his time. Many ascribe it to Moshe. Others ascribe it to people other than Moshe. Any intelligent person can see ideas that are very upright and that are intended by the author. Whoever he is. That clarify and purify the truth of Torah through rational proofs, and to remove stumbling blocks of the opinions of those who err in their arguments, by bringing counter arguments. They'll be swept away and they'll be as if they never were. Okay, so Sforno says many attribute it to Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, but not all. All right, so Sforno also acknowledges many attribute it to Moshe, okay, implied, but not all. Okay, so the question I want to ask here is, hold on just a second here. The answer I want to ask here is, if if Moshe didn't write it, okay, and it's possible that we said this last time, but I just want to make sure that this is clear. If Moshe didn't write it, okay, either with nevuah or with his mind, why might we ascribe it to Moshe? In other words, I'm not being clear here. Okay, let me scrap this. Okay, it's not false. I just want to start the outline again. Okay, statement. Okay, Chazal statement is, okay, Moshe wrote Iyov. Okay, possibility number one is this is intended. Sorry, this is a machlokas. This is one side of a machlokas. Okay, not everyone agrees. Okay, the other possibility, since again I'm only aware that this is the only statement from Chazal we have that actually positively identifies the author of Iyov. The other possibility is this is a unanimous statement. Okay, then within that you have interpretation one is everyone holds Moshe wrote it. Okay, interpretation two is, hold on a second, interpretation two is not everyone holds that Moshe literally wrote it, okay, but rather it is ascribed to him. So now my question is, if Moshe didn't literally write it, why would Chazal ascribe it to him? Okay, that's my question. Is that clear? That the only statement we have of Chazal that say any author, they say Moshe. So either everyone holds that, or it's a machlokas. If it's a machlokas, then we can concern ourselves with other opinions later. But if everyone holds by that statement, they either take it literally that Moshe actually wrote it, or they ascribe it to Moshe, which is not necessarily literal. So what could they mean if it's not like literally written by him? Yeah, Vanessa?
I have a question. Are you
Sure.
asking in the sense of like how Chizkiyahu, I forget what, I'm sorry, but how Chizkiyahu wrote something, but it was ascribed to Shlomo HaMelech?
Yes, exactly, right. That's a good example, right? Is that yeah, we talked about that last time, right? That it says Mishlei Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael, but Chizkiyahu and his his entourage wrote it, all right? Or let's say what was the other one it said? That the book of Daniel, is the prophecies in it are from Daniel, but it was written by Ezra, let's say. Okay, so what would be ascribing? What might they mean by ascribing it to him? Yeah, Tamar?
Maybe it's like supposed to draw your mind to this conversation by the Hegel.
Can't hear you now. Sorry to hear you, but the audio went out.
Okay, trying again. Is this better?
Yeah.
Maybe it's supposed to, I don't know, you have to give more details to fully make this an answer, but like that it's supposed to draw your attention to this conversation by the Hegel.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's a third possibility. Okay, is that the author wanted to draw your attention to this, dialogue with Moshe at Hegel. Yeah, Esti?
I was thinking more like that maybe these are things that Moshe, like if Chizkiah who wrote Mishlei,
Yeah.
that this is his chachma, but it's being recorded by somebody
Okay,
else.
good. So Moshe didn't literally, pen the text, but these are ideas from Moshe that were written down at a later date, okay, by someone else. Yeah, Vanessa?
I'm trying to think if what I was going to say is qualitatively different. I think it's the same, but I'm just thinking.
Okay, I'll say the third possibility, and then you tell me if it's one of those, okay? Is that Moshe didn't write the text or originate the ideas. Rather, these ideas reflect the best theories we have about Hashgacha, okay? And it is as if Moshe wrote them, okay? Like they're worthy of being written by Moshe Rabbeinu. That kind of thing. Yeah, Fega?
I think it also goes to show like the complexity of these ideas, that if even Moshe struggled with them, then like the questions are
Oh, that's
real
good
and
also.
significant.
Okay, good. So alternatively, even if Moshe didn't write them, these are the types of questions and ideas that even Moshe Rabbeinu struggled with. Yeah. Okay, Vanessa, do you figure out what you were gonna say? No. Okay. Okay. I want to do one more thing, and this kind of bleeds into the topic of
Wait, I'm sorry, can I ask one more question
yeah,
on
sure.
that?
Sure.
I think it wouldn't be something like this, and I just want to confirm that it wouldn't
Sure.
be like, unless this was said and I didn't understand it, like putting it on the level of something. Like this was a question that Moshe grappled with, so trying to put it in that like level of framework.
Yeah, to me, I think that kind of straddles the fence between answers 3 and 4. That this is either a Moshe type question or a Moshe type idea, like on that level, not Moshe type, but like of the level that he grappled with. Unless I'm
That's
not
okay to
understanding it.
say. Yeah, and that's okay to
I think
say.
so. I mean, I don't, you know, I
Oh,
mean,
like in other words, saying like so and so wrote it, meaning in a non-literal way, meaning that this is their like in their field sort of.
yeah, right. And again, like this is just, it's a thing that was done much more in the ancient world, or even the medieval world, than we're used to. Like we think when an author puts their name on the book, then it means that it's from them. But like, for example, okay, let's pick on the Zohar, right? So there are there are a lot of people who believe that Shimon Bar Yochai wrote the Zohar, and that Moshe de Leon, who produced the Zohar, either was telling the truth, that he actually found a manuscript from Shimon Bar Yochai, or he was forging it. Like he claimed it was written by Shimon Bar Yochai, but it really wasn't. But there's a third possibility, which is this was the thing that people did back then, which is that they attach famous names to the books to like bolster their credibility. And it's not forgery. That's not how they thought of it. But it's, same way that we ascribe, a parak of Tehillim to Adam Harishon. Really? You think Adam Harishon wrote the parak of Tehillim and they passed it down word for word, like all the way to David's time? To me, that's just not believable, but no, it's like we're ascribing to Adam to show the prominence or whatever, or Sefer Yetzirah to Avraham Avinu, yeah. Okay, now, what do I think? Okay, so I think one thing that has to be taken into account here is the language. Now, I might have mentioned that Iov is the most difficult language in all of Tanakh, arguably. Okay, and there are a lot of hapax legomena, which are words that only appear once in the text and nowhere else in the corpus. So Robert Alter, who is a modern translator, who is Jewish, but he's an atheist. Okay, he translated all of Tanakh though, and he's very scholarly. He writes as follows. Where to go? Wait, Alter. Did I delete it? No, here we go. He says the poetry incorporates a noticeably higher proportion of terms borrowed from the Aramaic than does the other biblical poetry. In some cases, even Aramaic grammatical suffixes are used, something that a translator from Aramaic would probably have avoided, but that would have come naturally to a writer who was hearing a good deal of Aramaic all around him and probably actively spoke it himself together with Hebrew. To cite one recurrent example, the Aramaic milin words, which would replace early biblical devarim in later Hebrew, appears 34 times in Job out of a total of 38 biblical occurrences. And the Aramaic plural ending in instead of the Hebrew im is used several times. All of this suggests a historical moment when Aramaic was in the process of beginning to replace Hebrew as the vernacular of the Judean population. That would be the Job poet in the 5th. That would place the Job poet in the 5th century, or perhaps as early as the later 6th century BCE, although it is impossible to be more precise. One cannot exclude a 4th century setting. So what this is essentially saying is that, I'm going to put this here, is that, what do modern scholars say is that the linguistic evidence in Iov points to a date of composition much later than Moshe, in around the 5th century, when Aramaic was becoming what do they call it? The lingua franca, right? So to me, and by the way, there are Chazal who theorize that Iov was written in the days of Achashverosh or in the days of the return from the exile. So this is not like a heretical view, all right? Now, but you could come up with a counter argument, okay? which I'm going to just say them here rather than having you guess them, because I want to end in 5 minutes. Okay, so counter argument number one is Aramaic was spoken even in the time of the Chumash. Okay, see Lavan. Okay, Lavan and Yaakov, when they parted ways, Lavan named the monument Yagar Sahadusa, and there are Aramaic words in the Torah. So Aramaic and Aram, it's Aramaic because it's from Aram Naharaim. This is where people spoke Aramaic. So it is possible that Aramaic was spoken much then, but the real counter argument is we know very little about languages in the ancient world, and are constantly being surprised in ways that overturn all our assumptions. Okay, so for example, what is perhaps the biggest linguistic discovery in all of human history? Yeah, I think Vanessa's getting it. The Rosetta Stone, right?
Thank you.
So
I knew what it was. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, okay. So we did not know how to translate hieroglyphics until the Rosetta Stone was discovered, and then that opened the entire field. So it was just completely gone. Okay, and then the other example is, I was going to say examples. The other example is, who knows about Ugaritic? Enough to say what the discovery was.
I missed my linguistics minor. No, I don't remember. But
okay, so Ugaritic, I'm just going to read Wikipedia. Ugaritic is an extinct Northwest Semitic language known through the Ugaritic text discovered by French archaeologists in 1928. Okay, so if you look at like people like Rav Hirsch or Shadal, who both tried to understand Hebrew, like and philology and like where the language came from, Rav Hirsch was doing it speculatively. Shadal was doing it scientifically. Okay, like trying to like understand, comparing like Hebrew to like Aramaic and stuff like that. They did not know about Ugaritic, and once Ugaritic was discovered, this whole language and culture, it shed a completely new light on Hebrew. So we could tomorrow discover a tablet from Moshe's time that uses the word milin, and then we won't think it's written later on. So I think to my mind, it is not likely that Moshe Rabbeinu literally wrote Sefer Iyov. Okay, but it's so either the ideas are from Moshe and some later writer wrote it, okay, or some later writer came up with it, like some of the Chazal hold, and that's based on linguistic evidence. I think it supports that. Yeah, Fega.
So if the ideas are from Moshe, but it was written down later, then isn't that kind of like Torah Sheba'al Peh?
Yeah, it would be a Torah Sheba'al Peh that was made into Torah Sheba'al later on. But remember, Torah Sheba'al was not canonized until Ezra and the Anshe Knesset Hagdola, right? Shlomo Melech wrote Mishlei, and they debated whether to have Mishlei in the written Torah. But yeah, Vanessa.
It's a similar question. I don't know how it works in any of the situations, so I think that's where I'm getting tripped up. Like when Chizkiyahu compiled it for Shlomo Melech, but like, do we think that Shlomo Melech wrote it, but then he took the bits and pieces together and like compiled it over time, or like did he dictate it and then is that a Torah Sheba'al Peh? Torah?
Yeah, I don't really know the process. Presumably with Shlomo, it was mashalim, so presumably they were passed on, by word of mouth. Maybe he wrote them down. It says Tikin Mashalim Harbe. He set up many mashalim. I don't know. Oh, and one more possibility, and then I got to stop. The Ibn Ezra says this thing. He says on his commentary on Eliphaz HaTemani in 2:11, Eliphaz HaTemani from the family of Teman, son of Eliphaz, son of Esav. It is probable to me that he was a relative from the days of Moshe, since one would only be traced to Teman after many generations. Chazal said that Moshe wrote Sefer Iyov. Then he says the correct view in my eyes is that it is a translated Sefer. Therefore, its interpretation is difficult, like the manner of all translated books. Now, I don't know what the Ibn Ezra means by that. I don't know if he means that Moshe got Sefer Iyov and then Moshe translated it, or if Moshe wrote it in a different language and then someone else translated it. I'm not sure how to relate these two statements. That he quotes Chazal said Moshe wrote it. The correct view in my eyes is that it is a translated Sefer. Yeah, but why are you quoting then the Chazal wrote it? So I don't really know. Okay, so I'm not sure. I just feel like this is relevant to say here. Okay. Okay, so that I think wraps up our authorship question. Next time we're going to talk, Billy Netter, about when or if Eov lived. Okay, and that will be next Friday. No Thursday shiur on some Gedalia. All right, have a good. I'll say what I said last night. Have a good day. Have a good Shabbos. Have a good weekend. Have a good Rosh Hashanah. Have a good year. Have a good life. All right. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Content and reading.